A new billboard campaign in Washington, D.C. is causing controversy with its call to jurors, informing them of their right to jury nullification. The illuminated advertisement appears at the Juciary Square Metro Station in the nation's capital. The billboards say, "Good jurors nullify laws," and "You have the right to hang the jury with your vote if you cannot agree with other jurors." The illuminated signs are in an area where jurors pass on their way to the federal courtrooms. This has upset prosecutors. They believe that widespread practice of jury nullification could lower their conviction rate. In courts around the country, government lawyers are asking judges to instruct jurors to judge just the facts in the case to determine guilt and innocence, not to judge the law. Jury nullification allows a juror to judge not just the facts in a case, but the legal basis of the law as well. Jurors have found defendants innocent of crimes throughout Western history based on the law of jury nullification. The billboards went up in October, and a fury erupted almost immediately. The controversial ads were designed by graphic artist James Babb. The Philadelphia native organized the fundraising campaign and collected $3,000 to run the advertisement. Babb is now placing similar ads near courtrooms in cities around the nation. James Babb is our guest today on the program. He's here to talk to us about his ad campaign, the history and rise of the jury nullification movement, and opposition to his ads. Welcome to the show, James.
Great to be with you.
Now, James, what inspired you to develop these billboards?
Well, I've always been a fan of jury nullification, usually through the traditional way of spreading the message through pamphleting. But I thought maybe there's a way to reach a bigger audience. So I looked into some billboard advertising, realized the prices weren't bad. And when I realized we have these incredible crowdsourcing tools and social media networks, I thought, why don't we push this out there? Let's see if our community wants to help spread the message to potential jurors that they have the power to judge the law itself, not just the facts of a case.
Now, James, you mentioned pamphleteering, and I know from our research that individuals who go to courthouses and inform juries, Julian Hecklin is one individual. He was arrested and repeatedly harassed. He has since left the country because of the harassment that he's received. Do you find that the billboard campaign is more effective because you're not on court property and therefore sort of out of the long arm of the law?
Well, we'll see. So far, prosecutors have been a little bit grumpy over these billboards that have started in D.C. The prosecutors have been complaining to the judge about it, and the judge is now questioning jurors to make sure that they didn't see the billboard. So we'll see where this goes. They're definitely not happy about it, but that's kind of the idea. I don't expect prosecutors to be happy with it because we're informing jurors about their rights.
Can prosecutors actually remove a juror if they have seen the billboard?
That's a good question. After the trial has started, I doubt it, but I'm not an expert on these matters. So what I do like the fact that they're complaining a lot has actually generated huge media attention, which is a really big plus. If they didn't complain about it, the Washington Post wouldn't have reported on it. NPR wouldn't have reported on it. So the more they whine, the more people find out about this powerful right that jurors have.
So why would these prosecutors not want individuals to know their rights?
Well, the justice system is polluted. It's polluted with so many victimless crimes. And the whole structure is based on convictions. They want it to be this simple assembly line. You walk in the front door and you exit into the jail. It's based on incarceration. I call it the culture of incarceration that we have right now.
Is it related to the corporate prison system, prisons for profit?
That's part of it. But let's face it. We've got lawyers, judges, prison guards, probation officers, all the people that supply all of these industries. It's a sick make-work program for a huge class of parasites. So, it's definitely a problem. I mean, right now we have 2.2 million people in this country behind bars. That's 1 out of every 100 adults is in a cage. If you're a black man over 18, that number is 1 in 15 in a cage. For black men in their 30s, that number is 1 in 10. Think about that. I mean, that is insane.
Extraordinary numbers. Now, I want to talk about nullification, not to be confused with nullification through the 10th Amendment, but jury nullification. How can it help to overturn bad laws?
Jury nullification has been a cornerstone of our justice system since the time of the Magna Carta. It recognizes the right of the juror to judge the law itself, judge how the law is applied, not just the facts of a case. So, for instance, in the 1600s, William Penn was charged with speaking to a group of Quakers without permission. He went before a jury. The jury said not guilty because they knew that law was wrong. In the 1800s, the Fugitive Slave Act made it a crime to harbor slaves, even in the North. Jurors refused to convict people for harboring slaves because they knew the law was wrong. In the 20th century, jury nullification played a role in ending alcohol prohibition. Jurors refused to convict people for alcohol-related crimes because they knew the laws were wrong. Today, we have this insane war on drugs is one of the primary ways that they're stuffing these jails. And we have over 1 million people in cages right now that have never hurt anybody.
So when you refer to jury nullification as a final safeguard to protect us from a tyrannical government, do you believe that we've actually moved into the realm of tyranny in the United States?
Well, without a doubt. I mean, when 1 out of 100 adults is in a cage and we really have no way of effectively changing all these laws. I mean, we've got little referendums here and there, kind of nipping at the edges, but the process does not involve the people in any significant way. But jury nullification is a way for the people still to impose themselves between the government and the government's victims. Martin Luther King sort of laid it out for us in his letter from Birmingham jail when he said, we have a moral duty to disobey unjust laws. Well, jury nullification is a tool that we can use to protect those people that choose to follow Dr. King's instructions.
James, who are the individuals fighting back against the rise of jury nullification? And is it really a threat to them?
Well, evidently it is. I mean, you've got some of these grumpy judges. Judge Belvin Perry in Orlando comes to mind. Who looked out his window and he just made a decree that in his realm there shall be no pamphleting of jury nullification information. And he wrote his own law and declared it illegal to pass out truthful information on a public sidewalk, even in the blocks surrounding his courthouse.
He decreed? Can you explain that? I mean, how can he possibly do that without going through the proper legislative channels?
Well, that's a good question, but judges can do a lot, and he said, well, you're going to be in contempt of court if you pass a pamphlet on the sidewalk outside my window, and some people, like you mentioned, Professor Julian Heichland, our friend Mark Schmitter in Florida, they said, oh, really? Well, I have a right to do this. I'm going to do it anyway. They were arrested by Judge Belvin Perry's men. I won't say they stood trial, but then they were judged by Belvin Perry to be guilty of breaking the law that he just created on the fly. And then Judge Belvin Perry sentenced them. And Mark Schmitter spent over 100 days in jail for passing out truthful information on a sidewalk about this topic. Now, I think this is sort of an extreme exception. Most judges know they don't have that type of tyrannical power.
Well, but why is this judge dead set against people knowing the rights and jurors knowing their rights? It baffles me.
Well, look at the courtroom, what the setting that they've created in there. You've got this guy in a special dress sitting up on a platform. Behind him is a giant logo, and people walk into the room and they stand up and remove their hats and they address them with this title that sounds almost like royalty. He's created an environment where sort of he wants to portray himself as the high priest, and people should come in and obey. The reality is the juror is the highest power in that room. The jury has the power. The judge is subservient to the jury, but the judge isn't necessarily going to tell these people that just walked in on the street, oh, by the way, you're in charge. He wants to be in charge. I witnessed a trial. It was Larkin Rose's trial some years ago, and I heard the judge tell the jury, now listen, guys, don't go home and look up the law. I tell you what the law is. These judges have, they think they're gods. So, of course, they don't want jurors coming into their courtroom with their own ideas about justice. Now,
let's talk about an individual who receives a jury duty summons in the mail. How should a person respond to that?
Well, I think the normal reaction is to say, how am I going to get out of it, right? Nobody wants to be ordered to do something and miss work and other obligations. And so that's certainly understandable. And that's the way I felt until I realized what an opportunity this is. This is our opportunity to prevent wrongful imprisonment. Just one of us, just one person on a jury with a conscience can say, you know what, that law is wrong. I'm not going to send a guy to jail just because he was smoking a joint. He didn't hurt anybody, didn't threaten anybody, didn't steal anything. It would be wrong to send him to jail, and I'm going to say not guilty.
Can there be any backlash against a juror who decides to stand up?
Absolutely not. There is nothing that can be done to a juror. There is no threat possible. I gave the example of William Penn. William Penn's jury was denied food, and the judge was tried to coerce them into ruling guilty. This was in the 1600s, but that didn't even work back then. So today, there's absolutely nothing they can do. If one juror says not guilty, but the rest say guilty, you get a hung jury. So they may try that case again, but if they have to keep doing it enough, they'll give up, and that's kind of the idea of why we call this nullification, because what we want is to create a pattern of this, to say the prosecutors just can't get any more convictions for these victimless crimes. This must be a bad law. Let's strike it from the books.
Now, what has fueled the recent growth in support for the jury nullification movement?
Well, I think it's the growth of all these victimless crimes. I mean, we're living in this sort of insane world where we've watched people go to jail for selling raw milk, for selling lemonade, for collecting their own rainwater on their own property, for gardening in their front yard, not to mention over 1 million drug arrests every year. So as they ramp up all of their ridiculous victimless crimes, the role of jury nullification is becoming more and more important.
Now, James, last question. What is the future of this billboard campaign you initiated?
Well, it's off to a great start. We've started in D.C. and now we're doing fundraising for other cities, and anybody can participate in this. We have a website called juryrightsproject.com, and you can read more about it. And there's fundraising links for the current cities and contact information. If anybody wants to see these billboards in their own city, they can contact me. I've had interest coming from Boston, Florida, Phoenix, Los Angeles, so Indiana. I mean, across the country, people are interested in this. So I'm hoping that this enthusiasm continues, and we're going to see these all across the country.
All right, James, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, that was James Babb right here on WHDT World News. You may see a billboard springing up in your town. Stay tuned. We have the rest of today's headlines. We've got all the news from Hollywood coming up and a full report on the weather right here on WHDT. Don't change that channel.